So before we start the show, Wiz Bets, I just gotta say, rest in peace to one of the best knockout artists in the history of the sport, Anthony Rumble Johnson. I mean, just growing up, this guy was a terrifying force, and it was crazy because he was always this big guy that would cut down to 170 pounds, and those weight cuts were insane. But what was even more insane is the way he'd face plant these guys, the way he struck the fear inside his opponents. And he went from 170 to 185 to 205. And I mean, knocks out Alexander Gustafsson in Sweden, knocked out Little Nog in his big UFC return, goes back to the regional scene, face plants DJ Linderman, which was one of the all-time greatest knockouts from the regional scene. And it's just been a highlight machine. And, only 38 years old. So, our condolences go out to Anthony Rumble's family, his friends, and he's a guy that'll truly be remembered and truly be missed. So rest in peace, Anthony Rumble Johnson. And let's start the show. Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Wiz Bets. Today we're going to be talking about UFC Vegas 65, Derrick the Black Beast Lewis versus Sergei Spivak. And it's going down this Saturday afternoon, not night, afternoon, at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. You got speaking of knockout artists like Anthony Rumble Johnson, it's only fitting that we got the UFC KO King, Derrick Lewis, headlining another card, taking on the emerging Sergei Spivak. And I have a feeling, Wiz, this fight is not going the distance.
Yeah, I tend to agree. In this fight, what I'm looking to see is if Spivak can get Lewis to the floor, because Lewis is a pretty heavyweight. He's up there, and he's shown to be a little bit harder on the harder side to get taken down. So that's going to be interesting.
So without further ado, let's get down to business on this main event, because in the heavyweight division, we got the KO King, Derrick the Black Beast Lewis. He's 26-10, taking on the Polar Bear, Sergei Spivak, who is 15-3. And currently, they got it Sergei Spivak minus 200. The comeback on Derrick the Black Beast Lewis is plus 170. So off the top, let me say this. These odds would have been flipped a year ago, bottom line. I mean, prior to Derrick Lewis having, been knocked out in 3 of his last 4, he'd 100% be the favorite in this fight. And what's interesting about this matchup is that it's just like another Derrick Lewis fight. I mean, he tends to get taken down by all the grapplers he fights, but he's got this ability he'll give up side control and then he'll just explode back up. And then when you talk about the Black Beast Blitz, I mean, there's a reason he's got the all-time record for knockouts, not just in the heavyweight division, Wiz, but in the UFC. And one of those blitzes, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much confidence you're bringing to the table. It doesn't matter how much youth you have. No one is exempt from a Black Beast shot to the chin. And I don't think Sergei Spivak is an exception here. That being said, the reason he's favored now is the kid's riding high with confidence. It seems like he's putting things together. He's on a nice little win streak. But make no mistake about it, we've seen Sergei Spivak be knocked out more than once in the first round. And we've seen when he gets dropped, he ain't coming back. So, I mean, what are the chances we're giving the Black Beast here? Because I feel like every time you count this guy out, he always surprises you, and he's always got a chance to knock anybody out.
100% and spot on analysis there. Spivak has been knocked out multiple times, like you said, in that first round. Tail of the tape, both of these guys are very similar, same height, edge to Lewis by an inch in the reach department. And I can't seem to understand the price tag that they're lining this fight at. I do understand that Spivak is riding high on this little win streak that he has going on, and yeah, he does have the grappling upside. But as you mentioned, Derrick Lewis just seems to be able to either defend these takedowns or pop back up, and that Lewis blitz is legit. So Spivak has a hard test on his hands.
100%. What's interesting about Spivak is, he's always had skill, in my opinion. Like, I always thought that he was a talented kid. It's just about, getting your feet wet inside the octagon. I mean, he got thrown to the wolves from the jump, had to fight Walt Harris, had to fight the Marcin Tybura's. But, I mean, he's picked up some good wins along the way. He did beat Tai Tuivasa in Australia. He's also handled his step downs in competition accordingly. I like the fact that he got out his comfort zone. He's training in Vegas now. He's got a decent jab. And just with heavyweight, we know that even if you're not known for your power, you can still knock people out. I mean, it's with those 4-ounce gloves, the polar bear connects on the chin. We know that the Black Beast, I know he got knocked out back in the day, but these last few, regardless of the level of competition, my boy's reaching 40 years old. So, and the thing about it, man, is that like with heavyweight, you sometimes feel like as they age, they get, a second win. As they age, they're like a fine wine. They get better with time. It's just the numbers say that he's been knocked out in 3 of his last 4. And I feel like he's not reacting to these shots as well as he once did. And also, kind of narrative wise, you got to question the motivation. He's already had his title shots. They didn't go his way. Is he finally, someone here made a good comment. Anthony said, has Lewis reached the cliff? And that's the fantastic question. I mean, that's really what this comes down to in my mind, because like I said, a year ago, I think that Sergei Spivak takes down Derrick Lewis. I think he passes the side control, but I think that Lewis, yeah, he doesn't have the best takedown defense, but he's got really good submission defense, and he's really good at finding that opportune time to explode back up to his feet and then blitz you, pound on you, the way he did to Alexei Olenek, the way he did to Ilir Latifi at times in that fight, and the way he's done throughout his entire career. And not just that, man. I mean, we're dealing with a guy who, for someone who's known for being a comeback guy, we're dealing with a guy who's got to win over the current heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou. Boring or not, let's just put it this way. Francis was scared to engage. I don't want to say scared, was timid in that fight against Lewis. That has to speak volumes to the kind of power that Lewis brings to the table. Lewis has a knockout win over Alexander Volkov. He's got a knockout win over Curtis Blades. He's beat all the guys at the top of the division. So this would be by far the biggest win of Spivak's career. And again, I think that Spivak is going to win this fight until he either gets his arm raised or until he's flat on his back looking at the lights. They got to bring in the smelling salts and possibly the stretcher.
Yeah, and like you said, Spivak could be winning this fight until he's not. I definitely could see a situation like the Curtis Blades fight, where Curtis Blades is winning the fight throughout, and then one little mistake, and he gets uppercut straight to the face, and he's out cold. So Spivak does have a really big test on his hands. It's a pretty steep step up in competition for him. So I'm interested to see how he performs here under the pressure. And I think this is his first really like big test other than his Aspinall fight, because Aspinall was the last fight he got knocked out in, and his last loss, in fact, which was 3 fights ago. So I'm interested to see what happens here. I do think there is some value on the Lewis line, though. I haven't played it yet, though. I'm still waiting. I could get a little bit juicier.
Yeah, I mean, let me say this. I don't think there's much value on the Spivak line, and I'll tell you why. Because, I mean, he should be slightly favored just in the sense that, maybe, the questions pertaining to how much does Lewis have left in the tank? He's been knocked out in 3 of his last 4, this and that. So, okay, let's make Spivak the favorite. He's on a nice little win streak, seems to be putting things together. So I get it. Let's make him a slight favorite. But where they have it now, I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't see much value. Like I don't view it when I'm talking about value, that implies that the line is off. That implies that I line at minus 300, minus 400, and it's only minus 200. Okay, there's value there, but I don't view it that way. I view it minus 170, minus 200 ish, and I'm good. I don't need to play Spivak here, because again, the way he's going to lose this fight is the way that everyone loses to the Black Beast. You're dominating him, and then he just comes out there and knocks you into the next dimension. He knocks you into next week. So, I mean, I just would rather sit back and watch it. And also, a lot of these fights Lewis has been losing, and I don't want to, I don't want to get into Narrative Nation, but we're about to get into Narrative Nation. A lot of them have been in Texas. For whatever reason, this dude can't win a fight in Texas. But here at the Apex, he's actually undefeated, Wiz. Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, let's see if we can keep this undefeated streak going.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I personally don't have any interest in betting this fight, but I do have an interest in watching this fight, and I'm hoping that Derrick Lewis can come out here and pay tribute to Rumble Johnson and get one in the win column for the all-time knockout artist, man. So I mean, I do lean Spivak, but I don't like the price at all. And historically speaking, Lewis wins this fight. You know, a year ago, Lewis is definitely winning this fight. And a year ago, you give me this price, I'm betting Lewis. That's the bottom line. It's just, you know, I'm just the questions about where he's at. That's what's holding me back. Bottom line.
And plus, we all want to hear that post fight interview again. He's great on the mic, so we need another legendary interview.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best, man. I mean, the interviews, the knockouts, the personality. You know, let's see if Spivak wins. Let's see if he's been working on his English a little bit. You always like it when these foreigners come out there, and even if they only know a couple words, like the fact that they're given that effort goes a long way. Like you look at Moicano, like it might be broken English, but like the fact that he's given just that little effort, it really goes a long way with the fans. It really resonates, and that's why I always said, like with Jose Aldo, who's a total legend, who's a Hall of Famer, who's one of my all-time favorite fighters. I know this dude knows perfect English, by the way. Yeah, I had a conversation with him in Vegas. He speaks perfect English, but the guy would never speak in English in any of his interviews or anything. And I think part of it was a pride thing, but I think also part of it is, when you're off camera, you feel a little bit more comfortable. Whereas when you're on camera, it's a little nerve wracking speaking in a foreign language. But if he would have just said a couple words, like back when Anderson was like, I you knock you out, that's like, oh shit, just like a couple words goes a long way. So if Spivak gets this win, I hope that he gets on the mic and surprises us with some money Moicano English.
Yeah, and in his last fight, I believe he spoke some English at the end of, like at the end of the tail end of the post fight interview. He said something in English. I can't remember. It's off the top of my head, but I'm sure he did speak like a sentence of English at the end.
AY said thoughts on the over 1.5 at even money. He says it's gonna be hard for Spivak to finish Lewis that quick in theory. Um, I don't know, man. It's tough because I mean, not only that, but like, what about Lewis finishing him early? Like Spivak's been knocked out in the first round more than once, and when you hurt Spivak, he tends not to come back in fights, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, if Lewis can come out here with that blitz and actually get to him, get him in that fetal position, get him covering up. Spivak ain't exactly known for coming back in fights, so I'm not writing off a Lewis knockout. But at the same time, Spivak gets the full mount. How many more explosions does Lewis have in him to get back up to his feet to survive those bad spots? Or is he finally at a point now where he feels like, maybe live to fight another day, maybe just get my paycheck and go back to my family? My boy's 40 years old. And I'd talk about how, there's a 10-year age gap here, but like I mentioned, with heavyweights, it's kind of different. Like if this was a 10-year age gap at flyweight, at bantamweight, at featherweight, at lightweight, that's one thing. Heavyweight, I've seen dudes win the title at 40, even light heavyweight. You saw my boy Glover Teixeira not too long ago. So it's a little bit different with the big boys, but the last few fights have not been looking the best for Lewis. They haven't been the best look. So I don't know. Sorry, I gave a long-winded answer that accumulated to I have no fucking idea. You got an opinion on the over 1.5 at even?
I think it's a coin toss at best, to be honest, because as you mentioned, either guy could get an early finish, but we've also seen the wrestling from Spivak hold later into fights. We've seen Derrick Lewis be durable in fights. Is he still that durable given his past couple fights going not as planned? I don't think so, but I still think it's a coin flip. So I'm gonna stay away from that spot.
Now, next up in the co-main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division, we got Iwan Kutalaba. He's 16-8 and 1 because apparently that Dustin Jacoby fight was a draw. And he's taking on Nigeria's Kennedy Nzechukwu, who is 10-3. Interesting that we got two guys from Moldova in the main event and the co-main event. That's pretty fucking cool. And currently, they got it Kennedy Nzechukwu minus 170, the comeback on Iwan Kutalaba's plus 150. another spot where like a year ago the line would have been flipped. That's what makes it so intriguing, because Ion Cutelaba, another guy where he'll go balls to the wall in that first round. And sometimes, when you're not quite on his level, he can win fights down the stretch. I mean, you saw the beatdown he put on Devin Clark throughout a 3-round duration. And I mean, he pushed a pace. And there's always a thing about, if you just get Iwan past that first round, he's not gonna perform as well. And boy, did he perform well in the second and third rounds. I thought, at least against Devin Clark, he put it on him. The thing is here, with Iwan, it's more of a thing in terms of like, he's not really known for overcoming adversity. He's more of an amazing hammer, but not the best nail. You take this guy's back, you start to threaten a choke, and he's not exactly known for surviving those spots. And it's not just a thing that we saw, dude, this fucking Tapology shit, the ads are getting crazy to a point where I'm like clicking Iwan's name and it's like taking me to like another window, right? It's getting crazy, Tapology. Y'all got to fix that, bro. But it's not even just a thing where his last 2 fights, he got choked out by Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann. I mean, even back in the day, like you remember the Misha Serkunov fight where Iwan went balls to the wall that first round. Second round started to slow down. By the third round, that shit was over with. Even the Jared Cannonier fight, first round goes balls to the wall. Second and third round, there's that famous, it's been turned into a meme where Jared Cannonier is walking him down with his hands down, and my boy is completely broken. The Glover Teixeira fight, first round, drops him with a spin. Second round, gets choked out, and you take this guy's back one time, you threaten a choke. Even the Ryan Spann fight, like Ryan Spann didn't even like throw a strike that fight. Like Iwan takes him down twice, and on the third attempt, he's shooting from a mile out, gives up his neck, and that's it. With Kennedy and Nzechukwu, he's always had the talent. He's always had the physical attributes. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's 6'5" with an 83-inch reach, also from Nigeria. You guys know I love my African fighters, my Sodiq Yusufs, my Usmans. I mean, like, there's something different about that African physicality. And I like what this guy's been doing. And if we're talking about how Iwan isn't known for overcoming adversity, guess who can overcome adversity? You saw that fight between Carlos Olberg and Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I mean, Carlos Olberg emptied the tank on Kennedy, man. I mean, we're talking about he threw like close to 300 strikes on Kennedy. Kennedy survived. He stayed composed. He stayed calm. And when it was his time to land his shots, he put Carlos Olberg out. My only issue with Kennedy is sometimes the aggression isn't quite there. Sometimes you want more from him, because I mean, like, it's like the video game controller we always talk about. You give me the video game controller for Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and I mean, we're beating Jiri. I mean, we're a world champion. So I just want to see Kennedy, show that killer instinct and really go for it like I know he's capable of, because I think that this guy's finished product is a top 10 guy, actually.
Yeah, I've always liked Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and especially in this spot. I mean, you go to look at the height and the reach advantages that this guy has against almost everyone in the division. It's ridiculous, and in this fight, it's no different. Iwan has been an undersized uh, fighter for the division, and Nzechukwu has 4 inches of height on him, and just to get this correct, 8 inches of reach on Ion Cutelaba. So he's gonna have Ion at distance as long as he can maintain that. And Ion is another fighter that has that blitz in him, and those blitzes usually turn into takedown attempts. Now, one thing that I like in Kennedy's arsenal is his knees. I think that his knees up the middle are going to pay him dividends in this fight, especially when Iwan's trying to shoot recklessly just because of the distance. And if you're looking at the record, Nzechukwu, yeah, he has that loss against Negumereanu, which it's not supposed to be a loss. That fight was supposed to be a draw. There was the eye poke, point deduction in the third round, and it was just weird how the judges scored that for Negumereanu, but that's in the past. I think the guy's starting to put things together, and he's starting to really fight smart. We used to always hate on Fortis MMA for the Fortis shell, where they just go up into, once they're backed up in the corner, they have that Fortis shell and they just get hit from the sides and there's no defense. but I think this guy is learning better defensive tactics, and he's putting together his combos a lot more, and we've seen that in the last fight. And as you mentioned, he had that fight against Olberg where he took all the shots and he still won. Now, yes, that's against a unfinished Olberg product. He was still pretty green in the UFC. It's still impressive given how Olberg has shown in his past couple fights. So I think Nzechukwu is the rightful favorite here. I think he does win the fight. I haven't got into the window yet myself, but more than likely I'll be interested in some sort in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Nikolai Negumeriano fight. I mean, he outstruck him, like 100 to 60, right? So, it was one of those things. I believe there were some point deductions and, a little fuckery, with the judges, how it can go. But Nikolai's different than Iwan. Nikolai's a guy with a shit ton of heart. Nikolai's a guy, you don't get him out of there, he's gonna keep walking forward the entire time until you get him out of there, or until he gets his arm raised. Like the last fight with Olberg, and shout out to Olberg, that was my only bet to cash last week. Last week was a bloodbath, man. But man, what a beautiful combo, man. He hit him with the jab, he stepped back, and then hit him with the same side left hook. That was absolutely nasty. Like that was really disgusting. Like that was just such a beautiful combo by Olberg. Like goddamn. But back to this, man. I mean, I can see Iwan coming out here and winning the first round. Like no joke. Like I can see him coming out here, getting some takedowns, getting on top, imposing his will a little bit. It's just that Kennedy's still going to be there most likely in the second and third round is Iwan, right? And historically speaking, like we said, Iwan's more so known for being a bit of a front runner. Iwan's known for, he can give it, but I'm not necessarily sure he can take it. A fantastic hammer, not the best nail. So for that reason, I do have to go with Kennedy and Nzechukwu, to get it done down the stretch, whether it's, finding a knee, finding a straight punch. He's got a big reach advantage in this fight. He's got a goddamn 8-inch reach advantage in this fight. Or, maybe we come out here and find a choke, or maybe when Iwan starts to slow down, maybe you'll see a little bit of wrestling from Kennedy. I just want to see Kennedy, have that incentive and have that, like, let's get aggressive, Kennedy. Like, I'm sick of some of these fights where he's kind of sitting back, but I also want to cut him some slack because you got to understand, this guy came to the UFC at only 6-0, Wiz. I talk about it all the time. These guys with 10 or less pro fights, you're going to be seeing these big improvements fight by fight. Now he's 10-3. So, 6 fights compared to 13 fights. I mean, that's more than double the fights, right? So this is a guy who's actually getting his feet wet. So, but back to the price, because I mean the price is everything, right? And I slightly lean Kennedy, so that it seems about right. It doesn't seem like there's much value there from my point of view.
Yeah, one thought that just crossed my head was, yeah, as you mentioned, Iwan's gonna win the first round at a pretty high clip here. So a live entry, and I know this is not your style of betting, a live entry in the second round on Kennedy might be the most optimal way, just given that how Iwan comes out in that first round. If he does take him down and hold him down, and Kennedy's able to survive, that's awesome for a live entry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I got no issues with live betting, man. I mean, especially like you get a nice little dog number, and you start to see Iwan, huffing and puffing on the stool. You never know. And then Safe gets in Kennedy's face and gives him one of those speeches. You know how my boy Safe Saud gets. He's man, I want that dude as like my alarm clock. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm too busy. I posted a fucking funny ass meme on my Instagram about alarm clocks. Here's what it said. So it said, I always put 2 alarms, one for the person I want to be and one for the person I am. You know what I'm saying, man? So I need that Safe Saud alarm clock. My boy Couch Warriors in the house. He said Dan's dog in the background right now is goals. Hell yeah, we got my boy Oscar right here. What's up, Oscar? Got my girl Blondie right there. I don't know if you can see her. My boy Leo ain't here, unfortunately, but he'll be back soon. He's staying at my dad's place. So whenever my dad goes out of town, Leo comes here and chills with me. But right now he's at my dad's. That's the little guy. But yeah, I got the two German Shepherds here at my place. But I appreciate you being here, Couch Warrior. So next up, we got the featured bout. Oh, and I assume we're both picking Kennedy as just a straight pick.
Yes, sir.
I said straight pick. I didn't mean bet. I just mean just a pick. Because I mean, he's minus 170. Like, I slightly lean Kennedy. That's, minus 170. I don't really if the line was flipped, I'd be betting Kennedy, but the line's not flipped, so I'm sitting back. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got the featured bout. We got Chase Sherman. He's 16-10, taking on Waldo Cortez Acosta, who was 8-0. Currently, they got it. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. Am I reading minus 220 Waldo, the comeback on Chase Sherman plus 180? It's interesting because long term, fading Chase Sherman's a very profitable venture. Like, there's no questions asked. If you fade him every single fight, you're getting a ridiculous return on your investment. So long term, I'm a believer in the Chase Sherman fade. The Waldo guy, though, I like him. I like the fact that he's a former baseball player and he's in there throwing fastballs like when he fights. Like, that's cool. But that last fight he just had with Vandera didn't exactly make the statement I was hoping he'd make. I mean, I always pick against Vandera because, I mean, death taxes and Jared Vandera does not win UFC fights. So, I picked him there, but he ate a lot of calf kicks, and that was only like 2 weeks ago, man. So, like, has he had enough time to heal to come back out here? But Chase Sherman usually is a very winnable fight, but like, from time to time, Chase Sherman will impress. From time to time, not always, but from time to time, you'll see big leg kicks from Chase Sherman. Guess what? This dude Waldo just got caught with a lot of big leg kicks his last fight, which was only 2 weeks ago on the Cater versus Allen card. So if that leg, if he's still icing that leg this week, man, Chase Sherman might look to target that. I mean, I know he will. My issue with Chase Sherman is the same issue I've had throughout his career. The guy does not move his head off that center line. He's there to be hit. And one of those fastballs, I mean, we're back to the heavyweight talk, these 4-ounce gloves. Doesn't matter how green Waldo is, Chase ain't going to be saying, "Where's Waldo?" Waldo's going to be right there to be found. So, another one where I don't see any value in Waldo in this spot. Minus 220. Okay, I get it. You're favored over Chase Sherman. Pretty much the whole roster should be favored over Chase Sherman, but he's still just a green guy. And like, when I think about green prospects and I talk about how, less than 10 pro fights, he'll be making all these big improvements fight by fight. He hasn't even had like a fucking training camp, man. He just fought 2 weeks ago. Like, he's probably still icing his calves. He probably, he hasn't had the time to really. I want to see, 6 months between fights. That's where you really make your improvements. So, yeah, I'm not that confident here.
Yeah, it's a very weird spot, and I was surprised to see Waldo even accept this fight just to step in. I understand it's Chase Sherman, but he ate some absolutely nasty leg kicks, like you mentioned, against Bandera, and he was not reacting well at all. Chase Sherman does have some power in his own right, but Waldo strikes me as a guy that is pretty durable, although he's been knocked out in the boxing ring a couple times. But I think Waldo's going to be able to get Chase Sherman out of there. My question is, will Chase Sherman have success with those leg kicks the same way as Vandera did? Because Vandera at least has some sort of head movement. Chase Sherman does not. This guy just walks forward and eats shots left and right. And Waldo was getting off on Vandera, and surprisingly, Vandera was surviving. I don't know if Chase Sherman's going to be able to survive. It's a very ugly fight. Measurables, they're both the same height at 6'4", both same reach at 78 inches. So I'm going to have to lean Waldo, but at minus 220, I'm not going to be able to take this guy. I took him in a parlay. I'm going to, like, full transparency, I parlayed him in the last card, and he made me sweat a little bit. So I'm going to lay off here.
Yeah, and another thing, I talk about how Chase Sherman doesn't move that head off the center line. Another issue we've had with him is he tends to significantly fatigue down the stretch in fights. And not that Waldo's some cardio machine, but I got to give Waldo a lot of credit. Despite that leg getting mangled up, despite him being green as fuck, he was still pushing through. He was still really trying to win the fight the whole time. So I really appreciate that effort. I just don't appreciate this minus 220 price tag, and I have no interest in betting it. So another one, I'm going to sit back, enjoy it, and hope these two go out there and put on a violent showcase.
And let's not forget to mention, both of these guys have some of the best nicknames. Waldo, Salsa Boy, Acosta, and Chase the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman. So some of the best nicknames in the heavyweight division.
It should have been Where's Waldo Cortez Acosta, but Salsa Boy is a good close second. So next up in the welterweight division, we got a striker's delight between Muslim Salikov. He's 18-3, taking on Andre Fialho, who is 16-5. And currently they got it Muslim Salikov minus 110, Andre Fialho minus 110. And interestingly enough, it just depends where you look, because in some spots they got it Fialho minus 116 and Salikov minus 104. And then I see other spots where they got it minus 131, Salikov, and plus 104, Andre Fialho. So it's all over. It's pick'ems, either dead pick'ems or pick'ems with a slight lean on each guy. You know, another one where it's like, historically speaking, I think Muslim Salikov would be a bigger favorite in this fight. But again, similar to the Black Beast, my boy's approaching 40 years old and, you know, is coming off a knockout loss. Both of them are coming off knockout losses, but, you know, Andre Fialho, he's got to be significantly younger, right? I mean, let me see what the age difference is here between the two.
38 to 28, 10-year
Oh,
difference.
10-year difference, exactly. Yeah, case in point. So, I mean, we're dealing with a kid and a grown ass man. So, yeah, I mean, again, historically speaking, this is a spot where I do favor Muslim Salikov. I mean, I think that, you know, he might not be the most active guy, but when he lets things go, boy, does he let things go. I mean, whether it's the spins, I mean, he knows how to fight behind his jab too. His takedown defense has gotten better over the years, and he's beaten some high level competition, whether it's Zaleski, whether it's Trinaldo. So, you know, I respect the body of work that Muslim Salikov's put together, and I've been a fan of him the whole time. It's just that, you know, my boy is getting up there in age, and it is what it is. Father time catches up to us all, coming off a knockout loss, but Andre also coming off a more brutal knockout loss, in my opinion. Jake Matthews is one of these guys who, like, one day, like, he beats Li Jing Liang, the next day, like, he's barely getting past Bojan Velikovic. Like, one day, like, he knocks out Andre Fialho, the next day, like, you know, he's losing. He's barely getting by some random scrub. So Jake Matthews is the definition of a hot and cold fighter, and he was hot that night against Andre Fialho. But listen, Andre Fialho is a dangerous guy. We know he can bang. You know, Muslim Salikov is more, pop that jab and look for his opportunity to get off on those lethal spins. I mean, there's a reason they call him the king of kung fu, the king of spin, because this guy can spin probably better than anyone in the welterweight division, besides maybe Wonder Boy. But at this point, I'd say Salikov's, I mean, his spins are absolutely lethal, man. They're so well timed. I really like his style. Fialho is more of overhand right, left hook, throw some calf kicks in there, kind of more of a, he's actually from Portugal, but kind of fights like a Brazilian banger, you know? So, yeah, I'm a fan of both these guys a lot, and there's definitely a chance that, you know, Andre Fialho can touch the chin of Muslim Salikov, but I think actually the better process goes to Salikov, and I think that despite him having a little bit lower output just overall, I think that he can actually win minutes here because he gets guys to really respect him, and as a result, their volume wanes. You know, as a result, they're not out here throwing high output because they respect what's coming at them so much. His counter ability is truly on point. So, yeah, I'm a lean with Muslim Salikov. It's just, again, my boy's almost 40. My boy's at that point where, you know, speed is one of those first things to go, but power is one of the last things to go. So I know he can still knock people out. I just wouldn't be surprised if, you know, maybe the speed on the spin starts to wane a little bit. Maybe, you know, he starts to gas out a little bit sooner than we expect, things like that. But historically speaking, I think that Muslim is more of a minus 180 favorite actually in this spot. It's just in his current form, is he that, you know? So my pick is Muslim Salikov.
And I tend to agree. I am shying away just because of the A, age difference. B, Salikov has given up 4.5 inches in reach. So that paired with the age, paired with the speed, it's not the best equation for a fighter who's going against someone that has the power that Fialho does. Both fighters, as you mentioned, coming off of knockout losses. But Fialho in his own right, he doesn't really have that good of a chin. We saw him get absolutely wobbled by Cameron Van Camp before he got the knockout. and he got knocked out by Jake Matthews. And I'm not disrespecting Jake Matthews, but he's hasn't been the one to show power in the right sense. It was a lot of accumulation from the first and second round, but I do think Salikov has power. I think he can crack, and he ate shots from Li Jiangliang for that first round and almost 2 rounds before he got put out. So I really like Salikov in this spot. I'm still trying to decide if I really want to take the shot on him. And I do agree. I think if this fight was maybe a year or two ago, Salikov would be lined around minus 180. Just given that he's up there in age, I think that's why this line is closer to that pick'em. And Fiallo is just one of those popular names. People see the highlights and they're instantly attracted, and they see minus 110, or at one point he was like plus 115, 120, and they're like, oh, we're gonna bet Fiallo just because of how dangerous this guy is. And I don't hate it, but you have to dig a little bit deeper. And what you see from Fiallo is very repetitive combinations. He likes his 1-2-3 jab, hook, cross, and you see a lot of fighters, at least that smart fighters, that catch on to stuff like this. And I think Salikov is going to be one of those fighters that's able to navigate through those repetitive combinations and find a knockout on his own. The one prop that I don't really seem to get how it's priced is the fight doesn't go to distance, is only minus 170. And I was quite surprised personally. I thought this fight, no matter what's going to get finished, whether it's Fiallo getting a knockout or Salikov getting a knockout of his own.
Anthony Harge with another good point. Salikov is way better technically, but he's getting up there in age. You know, this guy Anthony's been making some good points throughout this whole show, so got to give him some credit. Anthony, hit me up on Twitter, man. You know, maybe you should start voicing your opinions more, because everything you've said so far is on point. Got my boy Jay Luke in the house. What's up, Jay Luke? Hey, y'all, check out my boy Jay Luke. He's a badass rapper from the South. Really cool dude, Braves fan. We met at the Braves game about a year ago, and just a really cool guy. He also is friends with Jamal Hill and, you know, and Billy Q. So like they know about him, and he's out here supporting some really good fighters, and he's doing all the rap stuff on his own. So y'all check him out, Jay Luke. That's my boy right there. So appreciate you being here, Jay Luke. And everybody, before we talk about Jack Della Maddalena versus Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, do me a huge favor, smash that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. Because next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Jack Della Maddalena. He's 12-2, taking on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, who is 18-6. And currently, they got it. Jack Della Maddalena, depends where you look, minus 485. The comeback on Danny Hot Chocolate is plus 385. But I also see somewhere where it's minus 550, and the comeback on Danny Hot Chocolate is plus 400. So look, needless to say, I'm sure we're both picking Jack Della Maddalena, but I mean, like, what am I supposed to lay minus 550? Like, I'm good on that, you know, because like when you see a price like this, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, Jack's going to come out here and knock him out in the first round. And you give me minus 150, you give me minus 250, even minus 300. Then I might be like, you know what? Let's go ahead and lay it straight. No big deal. He's going to knock this guy out in the first round. But when you start talking about minus 550s, you start talking about minus 600s, that's where we have to address possible concerns. And yes, Danny Hot Chocolate is a little bit chinny. Yes, he's been knocked out before. Yes, he wobbles in a lot of other fights, but like when the guy's not getting knocked out, the guy's a dog, man. The guy comes to fight, and the guy's well-rounded. He's got big power. I mean, he's knocked a lot of people down. He's knocked a lot of people out. You can also, from time to time, mix in some wrestling. So the only reason I have to bring this kind of stuff up is because we're dealing with a goddamn minus 500, minus 600. You have to cover all your bases so that if, you know, the upset happens, you don't sit here and cry. I mean, when Ramazan Ameev was like minus 500 against this guy, he got the upset. So, and I know a lot of people scored it for Ameev, but just saying, from time to time, Danny will surprise you. Now, is he going to surprise you this weekend? Probably not. I mean, I think Jack Della, you know, one of the cleaner boxers for MMA standards. Now, I'm not saying he's a clean boxer to get in the ring and, you know, challenge some of these real boxers, but for MMA, where, you know, MMA fighters have been historically criticized for their boxing, This guy fights behind his jab. He mixes it up to the body really well, throws the occasional kick, which I like, and is really composed in there. And he's a guy that can give it and can take it, which is fantastic because unfortunately for my boy Hot Chocolate, look, Hot Chocolate's got the heart of a lion. And while he's still awake, he's going to be trying his ass off. So you got to respect the warrior spirit that Hot Chocolate brings. It's just that Hot Chocolate can't exactly take it as well. But it's not a situation of being a good hammer and a bad nail like Iwan Kutalaba, because like if you put Danny Hot Chocolate in a bad spot and you're trying to choke him out, like he's gonna try his ass off to fight out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like even that Claudio Silva fight with that armbar, it didn't really look like he tapped out. It looked like he was willing to let Claudio Silva break his arm. It's the ref that actually stepped in and was like, yo, like I ain't letting you get your arm broken today. So I think this guy's got the heart of a lion. It's just a matter of his chin ain't exactly the best, and you probably need that artillery on your chin to fight a guy like Maddalena. So yeah, I'm picking Maddalena, but I mean like minus 500, I'm good on that, dude. I'm good. So maybe Maddalena's coming in here with an injury. Maybe he got into a fight with his girlfriend the night before. Maybe you want to roll a half unit shot on Hot Chocolate, but I'm all good. I'm gonna pick Della Maddalena, probably by knockout. But like I said, occasionally Hot Chocolate will surprise you, and he'll be able to get into a gritty back and forth war. I mean, you saw Maddalena in a war with Angelusa. Now, granted, Angelusa, I think he's got a far superior chin to Hot Chocolate. Interestingly enough, they are training partners, so he's probably getting some insight from him. But yeah, I think I've said enough. I'm gonna pick Jack Della Maddalena to get it done.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree on this fight, and there isn't much you can really say. It's a pretty binary matchup, in my opinion. Della Maddalena is one of my favorite up and coming prospects in the UFC. He's one of my favorite boxers, UFC wise, to watch, just because he's so crisp. His boxing seems like it's like he's a robot, and these counters come at the right time. He's landing really efficiently. One of the more efficient boxers in the division in the UFC altogether. And I mean, we know the resume Danny Roberts has, and I just can't trust the chin. I think Della Maddalena gets it done inside the distance, but even then, you look at that line; it's at minus 200, and do you really want to pay minus 200 for a Della Maddalena inside the distance? Where yeah, he's shown that he's been able to take out the guys that are a little bit lower level. I think this is a little bit of a step up in competition. Nothing too crazy. I'm not saying he can't handle it, but Danny Roberts is more than capable of staying in there. He could lose a decision, but I'm favoring the Della Maddalena inside the distance, but I'm not going anywhere near this line. It's disgusting.
It sure is. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he's 14-7, taking on Charles Johnson, who's 11-3, and both these guys are former champions in other organizations. Charles Johnson being LFA, and Zhalgas was it Fight Nights Global? I'll tell you in a sec once Tapology stops taking me to another fucking page when I click the dude's name. It was some Russian promotion that my boy was a champion. Firstly, the guy's a champion in life because I mean he's got like 6 wives. Yeah, it was Fight Nights Global. My boy's out here with 6 wives. So shout out to Zhalgas. Win, lose or draw, this guy's living the life. So we tip our cap to a guy like Zhalgas Zhumagulov. But currently they got it. Charles Johnson minus 155. The comeback on Zhalgas Zhumagulov's plus 135. My issue with Zhalgas Zhumagulov's always been in the fighting, not outside the cage. Outside the cage, this guy's a boss. This guy's a pimp. This guy's someone that we can all look up to. 6 wives, like that. My boy's got a lot of patience, but he's probably got a lot else going on for him. So I give him a lot of respect. But look, inside the cage, my issue with Zhalgas Zhumagulov is that he's not the biggest guy, and he can get bullied around a lot. Not to mention sometimes he just doesn't do enough, and that's a big issue. And with this guy Charles Johnson, I know he didn't have his best showing in his UFC debut, but something I liked about his regional fights is the guy is one of the taller flyweights. He's 5'9", which at flyweight, I mean that's like the equivalent of like a 6'3" a 6'3" lightweight, right? He's got a 70-inch reach. He's got a longer reach than Max Holloway, and this guy's a flyweight, right? So he's very long, and he's a very boxing-oriented guy, fights behind his jab, really nice cross, switches stances. When he gets taken down, he tends to pop back up. So I like what I've seen from him. It's just, when you're talking about this price, is he going to fully cover it? Because Zhalgas, like, he tends to fight close with a lot of guys, but at the same time, the issue I've always had with him is that, he really can be bullied around in there. And I felt like some of the wins he got on his regional scene, like, I didn't really think he beat Tagir in that fight. I thought Tagir clearly won that fight. And I'm really happy to see the progression Tagir's made in his career, because I've always thought he was talented, but now he's actually, that last fight against Manis, I mean, that was a clean dub over there. So I'm happy to see what Tagir's been doing. But back to this, man. I think that Charles Johnson is just going to kind of be longer, be more active, just slightly be ahead on the scorecards, and come out here and win a decision. So the thing is, Zhalgas, occasionally, I mean, like, even that Paiva fight, he made my boy Paiva work in that fight, he'll mix in the occasional takedown. He'll throw big bombs from time to time. It's just sometimes I want to see more from Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Like, just to put it in perspective, he hasn't gotten anywhere near the 100 significant strike mark, in a 3-round fight yet, so he's not exactly known for being a high volume guy. He's more of a sit back, and when it's time to counter, he'll throw some big shots, and sometimes they're impactful, but at the end of the day, it seems like he's just not getting it done at the UFC level. Charles Johnson, the jury's still out on him, but what I saw in that Moda fight, I think should be enough to scrape out a decision here. So give me Charles Johnson to win this fight.
So Zhalgas Zhumagulov, the one thing I don't like about him is he tends to fight really close fights. A lot of his fights tend to be coin flips, or he's winning until he loses. He had Manel Kape on skates for a second before he got knocked out. That Molina fight, I think he personally won, and he got robbed there as an underdog. So he performs really well as a dog historically in the UFC. The one issue in this fight is he's facing someone that is much larger. To give you perspective, Zhalgas is 5'4" and Charles Johnson is 5'9", so that's a 5-inch height disadvantage for Zhalgas. And when you're looking at the reach department, it's a 70-inch reach versus 66. And Dan, you might know this too. When you're fighting someone that's taller, it's that much more of a reach disadvantage, because you have to punch up, and that, along with the distance management, makes it that much harder for Zhalgas. Now, he's always been the fighter that likes to close distance, so I still think he can find some success. But Charles Johnson, in that fight against Mokaev, he had a couple of moments here and there. I'm not going to say he had anything significant, but he showed that he's durable and he could last. And he stood against the storm, and he didn't get finished. He lost by decision, but Mokaev is out here finishing people. So I think Charles Johnson is the rightful favorite. I do like his boxing, and I do think he can occasionally mix in the wrestling here too. The reach is going to be huge in this fight for him. So I think he cruises to a decision. I don't think it's going to be as close as most Zhalgas fights are usually. So yeah, give me Charles Johnson, but at the current line, I don't think I'm going to be going anywhere near it. It's going to be a really fun fight to watch, though.
Controversial opinion, but actually was like the only guy that scored the Molina fight for Molina, interestingly enough. I mean, like, if you look at the numbers, it was a close fight. It could have gone either way. I accept that. But if you look at the numbers, I mean, like, Molina outstruck him by almost double. The only round that they had even strike counts was the first round. So I guess it's about the takedowns, but I felt like Zhalgas didn't do shit with them. So I've judged it for the guy that, landed double the output. And that's back to what we've been talking about. He just doesn't do enough. So that's the big issue, but doesn't do enough, but will fight close. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with Zhalgas there. But yeah, I think we're both picking Charles Johnson. Hopefully, look, if Charles Johnson could shave that fucking thing off the back of his head, then I might actually bet him in this spot. But that thing is that thing's gonna hold you back in life, man. So, when it's time to say when, you gotta accept it and just do it, man. So from one bald man to another, shave that fucking thing off your head, man.
And
Please.
he's gonna do it if if he needs to make some weight.
Right. Yeah. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Jennifer Maia. She's 19-9, taking on Marina Moroz, who's 11-3. Currently, they got it. Am I seeing this right? Hold on one second. So sometimes with the fight odds, like it's all like messed up. Let me pull up best fight odds, which so currently they got it. Okay, I am looking at it right. Marina Moroz -190. The comeback on Jennifer Maia +160. Let me see where this opened. So it opened -150, Marina Moroz. So they were thinking a little bit closer. They were thinking she wins 6 out of 10 times. I gotta say, Marina Moroz is a completely different fighter at 125 than she was at 115. At 115, we were making the jokes about the tennis sounds. We're making the jokes about her, punching the air and doing all these things. But I feel like now that she doesn't have those brutal weight cuts anymore, these last 3 performances at 125 has just been a completely different human being, man. I mean, the Mayra Shitara fight, Mayra Bueno Silva, I thought she did really good, and she had to overcome some adversity. Mayra Shitara was cutting down that leg, man, was chopping it, and I felt like Marina Moroz did really well in that fight, and it was a significant difference compared to her days at 115. Sabina Mazo gave her a vet lesson, and then Maria Agapova, overcame some spots in the first round, and when it was time to get it to the mat in the second, taught that young lady a lesson. So I like everything I've seen from Marina Moroz moving up, and I guess this is considered a step up in the rankings. But I got to keep it 100 with you, man. I've never been sold on Jennifer Maia. I just haven't. I think that she's serviceable. I think that she's decent. The fact that she won a round against Valentina was pretty cool. Like, she had a moment in that fight where she took Valentina down, didn't really do much with it, but the fact that she took Valentina down, oh my God, that's a talking point. But back to kind of like my boy with the 6 wives, like Maia can like fight close and she can fight competitive, but I feel like she just doesn't do enough in these fights, and I think that's going to cost her again. So yeah, I'm not in a rush to lay this price on Moroz, but I will pick Moroz to win a unanimous decision here.
Yeah, I tend to agree with all those points. Although I do think part of Moroz's game plays into what Maya wants, which is that jujitsu. I'm really impressed with how Moroz has looked. She's really aggressive and looks for those takedowns almost immediately at points, and she knows how to handle her business. Against Agapova, she was talking some smack, and she was like, "Yeah, I know what her weaknesses are," because they were training partners, and she went straight to that game plan and took her down and completely mauled her on the floor. So I think from a fighting IQ standpoint, Moroz is levels above where she was at 115. So you have to like that. And when you look at the tail of the tape, she's 3 inches taller and 3 inches longer in reach against Maya here. Also, the younger fighter by 3 years. It's kind of weird how it's all threes, but it's just how it is. Maya, in that Fioro fight, she did fight her close in those first 2 rounds. I gotta say, uh, Fioro didn't really have too much for her until she found the boxing avenue, and that's what concerns me a little bit. Uh, Especially given that part, as I mentioned earlier, Moroz's game plan is taking people down and smashing them, and that's what Maya wants. And on the feet, I think it's pretty equal, pretty even. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fight goes and where it takes place, and who's successful in initiating the grappling and wrestling exchanges, and who lands on top, because that's going to be the key factor for me in this fight. So from an entertainment value, I really like this fight, and it's not like most WMMA fights where we're expecting a striking matchup for 3 rounds. It's going to be all over the place. Slight lean to the Moroz side, but I don't think I'm going to be betting it.
Next up in the Bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Miles Johns. He's 12-2, taking on Vince Morales, who is 11-6. And firstly, we're gonna get rid of the nickname Capo for Miles Johns. He's officially has to relinquish that nickname. Let's give it who's like a boss at Bantamweight. Like let's give you know who deserves the nickname Capo. I want to say Adrian Yanez, but I know Miles Johns beat Adrian Yanez 10 million years ago, so that'd be contradictory. But if you actually watch that fight, I mean, Miles Johns was diving on legs, was hugging him for dear life, whereas Adrian Yanez was actually landing shots, and it could have gone either way. But Miles has to relinquish that name Capo because his fighting style is not one of a boss. But let me say this about this fight. Well, first, let me say the odds. Currently, they got it. Miles Johns minus 165. The comeback on Vince Morales is plus 140. Miles Johns is a great athlete, but Miles Johns is not the toughest guy. Miles Johns comes from a great camp, and hopefully Saif Saud is engraved in this guy's fucking thick skull. Kick Vince Morales's legs. Vince Morales has skinny legs. Vince Morales doesn't check leg kicks. Vince Morales has been badly compromised via leg kicks on more than one occasion, whether it's the Chris Gutierrez fight, whether it's the Benito Lopez fight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The thing with Vince Morales, generally speaking, pretty harmless. Not the most imposing guy, but occasionally he'll surprise you with that right hand. Occasionally he'll hurt guys with that right hand. That's literally the only weapon I'm worried about. I'm not worried about, left hooks. I'm not worried about his jab. I'm not worried about his kicks. I'm not worried about knees. I'm not worried about takedowns. I'm not worried about his ground game. I don't think he has any threat whatsoever besides that right hand. And Miles Johns, not exactly known for being the toughest guy. He eats one of those right hands. Miles Johns ain't known for being the guy that comes back from adversity. Miles Johns is more of, a front-running bully. But I think this is a spot where he can be where he can front run in this fight. Let's come out here, keep your distance, kick this guy's legs, mix in a takedown at the end of the round, go out there and win this decision. Do not pull a stunt here. I got Miles Johns via unanimous decision.
Yeah, Miles Johns has the advantage here in all facets of MMA, whether it's the wrestling, the striking, the leg kicks, the grappling. He has it all, but the question for me is the fight IQ always. Um, if he does go and straight away kicks those legs and really beats him down, he can, hindsight, make this look like a very easy fight from the get-go. Now, as you mentioned, Vince Morales has that right hand that he's knocked people down with. He was the first person to knock out Louis Smolka, who was known to be a little bit more on the durable side. But man, this guy doesn't really pose any threat after the first round and like a round and a half, I'll say, because the power doesn't seem to carry with Vince Morales. So the question is, can Miles Johns survive the first round and a half if he eats one of those clean right hooks or right straight punches to the face? And quite frankly, I don't know if he can. He's shown that he's the type that will give up and wants to look for the way out once he gets hit with one of those hard shots. And I don't think I want to trust him with that kind of price tag. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Miles Johns, if he wants to take this fight the easiest way, it's going to be taking him down because we know Vince Morales cannot defend the wrestling and takedown attempts. So taking him down early and often and chopping at the legs is going to be key for Miles Johns in this matchup. And as long as he can put that together, he should cruise. But you can't really count on that. So I'm laying off, but Miles Johns is the pick.
Now, next up, also in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Ricky Turcios, he's 11-3, taking out Kevin Natividad, who is 9-3. And currently, they got it. Ricky Turcios minus 155. The comeback on Kevin Natividad plus 135. Actually curious where this opened. It opened minus 185, Ricky, plus 160, Kevin. I mean, it's one of those things where, Kevin Natividad, I don't think he's actually shown his best inside the octagon yet. And by the way, on a side note, check out Kevin Natividad's brother, Christian. I actually think he's better than Kevin. I think Christian Natividad might get a call to the UFC, and that dude's got a lot of heart, man. He was dominating his last opponent, and then his last opponent put him in this disgusting guillotine. And I'm talking like locked in, like game, set, and match. And like Christian Natividad survived that shit. It was pretty fucking impressive on that. I think it was like LFA or one of those shows. So look out for his brother. He's gonna get to the UFC here soon. My issue with Kevin Natividad, the guy's a bit chinny, you know, and not just the 2 UFC losses, but even outside the UFC. Got knocked out in 9 seconds in his one loss outside the UFC. So when you've been knocked out 3 times, I mean, I think it's safe to say the guy's chinny. But if he's not getting knocked out, I think he's a pretty tough scrapper. I think that he can go out there and bang, and I think he can go out there, have a lot of exciting fights, get some knockouts, put on some fight of the night type fights. It's just with this guy, Ricky Tercios, the good news is most likely he's not gonna be knocking you out. I think. I mean, I say that I could be wrong because Kevin's chin is not the best. So maybe. But the thing with Ricky is his style really pissed a lot of people off his last fight, and rightfully so. You know, the guy's making all these unnecessary Kia sounds and doing all this bullshit, throwing 200 strikes at the air, only landing like 27 of them. And you hear the guy's interviews, and I mean, the guy, you know, the guy's rotting his brain. If you want, go listen to his interviews, man. I mean, the guy's on drugs or something, man. You know, I mean, I got nothing against smoking weed. I used to be a stoner myself, but I'm talking like this guy smokes weed while he's sleeping, you know. And if you hear his interviews, doesn't strike me as the brightest guy. And I'm not a fan of laying chalk on him. It's just about, do we view it as, you know, Kevin Natividad just simply doesn't belong. But the thing about it is Boston Salmon doesn't belong, and Boston Salmon fucking boxed this dude up. Ayman Zahabi is kind of hit or miss. Ayman Zahabi, you know, took this guy through it. So, but then on the other hand, he did get that win over Brady Heastan, which could have gone either way, but the fact that it was as competitive as it was shows me that, like, you know, maybe this kid does have some skills. Maybe he just got carried away with the bullshit his last fight. Maybe he can, you know, reel it in this time. My boy Andy said something funny. He said, let me hold up. He said, "We stoners will not claim Ricky." Yeah, I feel you, man. I mean, dude, like he's yeah, not a good look what this guy's doing, man. That last fight, I mean, if he pulls some bullshit like that again here, that's his last UFC fight, period, point blank. I mean, I think if he doesn't knock out Kevin, it could be a competitive 3-round fight. It's just, can we trust that chin of Natividad? But I mean, speaking of chins, I mean, did you see what my boy Mana Martinez did to Ricky Tercios on the regional scene? Now, granted, Mana Martinez has different kind of power. He hasn't shown it in the UFC yet, which is crazy. Even though he's dropped a couple guys in the UFC, but I'm saying, like, if you watch Mana Martinez's regional fights, like, he was sleeping guys like out. Like, you know, they had to bring a pillow into the canvas. They were taking serious naps, man. So Mana Martinez, if there's one thing about him, that boy can crack. And I think that as his UFC career progresses and he starts to feel more comfortable, you might see some knockouts from him. So it's not that, like, that's that bad of a loss. I mean, I'm a lean Tercios, more experience, blah, 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 but I am not sold on this guy, Ricky Tercios, and I'd love to pick Kevin Natividad here. I just don't trust him, Wiz. I just simply don't. I don't trust either guy. I don't mind not even watching this fight, so I'm a pass altogether.
You summed it up pretty much perfectly here. Interesting stats to pull up. In that last fight for Tercios, he was somewhere around 33% striking accuracy, which is abysmal. But then you look at Kevin Natividad, and it doesn't get much better. The guy is averaging 27% striking accuracy. Both these guys are practically punching air. No disrespect, but the facts are the facts. And I do favor Tercios in this matchup pretty heavily. I do think it's a get right spot for him, and I just don't rate Kevin Natividad highly at all. He does have a little bit of power in the hands, but it's nothing that he's really shown off. But he can crack when he does land. The issue is landing for him. So, all that being said, I have to take Ricky Tercios in this fight at the price tag. If that last fight didn't happen, he hindsight would have been like a minus 220, 230 favorite, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think he should be a minus 220 or 230 favorite against anyone, but against Kevin Natividad, anyone could be that price tag for the most part. So I have to pick Tercios here, and I think he gets it done and shows why he does belong in the UFC. Because anyone else in that lower part of the bantamweight division would have gotten or would have lost to Brady. And Brady has some superb wrestling, and we'll get to Brady in the next fight. Actually, no, in 2 fights. So that Brady fight was very, very. What's the word I'm looking for here? For lack of better words, impressive. But can Tercios put it together like he put it together in that fight? That's the question that needs to be answered.
Give me Christian Natividad. Can we sign Christian Natividad to come out here and beat Tercios? Because I'd actually pick him pretty confidently. I like Kevin's brother better than him, just in terms of who I think is the better fighter. But unfortunately, we're not dealing with Christian yet. We're dealing with Kevin. Not saying Kevin can't win, because I mean, that bullshit stunt that Ricky pulled, he does that shit again. I mean, like, you're throwing at what was it, 37% accuracy? You said you throw 200 strikes.
32.
Exactly. You throw 200 strikes at the air, only 27 of them land. You're making more sounds than strikes landed. I mean, that's, there's a reason that everyone went from like loving this guy to like, yo, like, get this guy off my fucking TV, please. ASAP. So, it's crazy how you can turn things around like with one bad mistake, right? Like, yeah. But anyways, I can go off about that for a while, but I'm good now. Next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Maria Oliveira. She's 13-5, taking on Vanessa Demopoulos, who is 8-4. And currently, they got it Maria Oliveira -115, Vanessa Demopoulos -105. So a pick 'em with a slight lean towards Maria. Maria open -150. What do you think, man? Because I mean, I'll tell you what, both of them have kind of like exceeded my expectations that I had of them coming into the UFC, because I remembered Maria as like the chick that, quit standing against Marina Rodriguez on Contenders. And I remember Vanessa as just kind of like, a low percentage, guard puller that can occasionally get arm bars. But like that last fight against Jin Frey, look, regardless of who you scored it for, and regardless of the aesthetics in that fight, I respected the fact that like she gave effort there. I respected the fact that she tried, and apparently she's been at the PI breaking records, whatever that means. I think personal records. I don't think she's been like, beating Wiley Zhang's records or anything. I think it's more like she's been just leveling up. So I respect her for that. And I thought that Maria Oliveira against De Paula, she kind of shined with the crowd there, man. Like that was the best performance of her career. So what are you thinking here?
Man, I've been harping at reach advantages and height advantages all stream. And man, this chick, Maria Oliveira, almost has a longer reach than a lot of the guys in the featherweight division. She's at a 69-inch reach against 62 for Vanessa Demopoulos.
Hold on. UFC stats says 59 for Vanessa. There's no way that's right?
Yeah, there's absolutely no way. You go ahead and look at her last fight against Gloria DePaula, and you'll see otherwise.
No, I'm talking about Vanessa. They say Vanessa has a 59-inch reach.
Well, that, I mean, I can't really confirm or deny, because it's hard to measure these girls' arms when they're in fight. But
it's not like she fights behind her jab, anyways.
Exactly. But you could see how long Maria Oliveira's arms are. That's for sure. So she has a 7-inch reach advantage here and a 4-inch height advantage. And man, this chick Maria Oliveira can crack. We saw it in that fight and against Gloria DePaula. She can put people down. She can hurt girls. And against someone like Vanessa Demopoulos, who is not known for striking defense at all, I think Maria Oliveira could get the finish here pretty handedly at a high clip. I probably am going to bet that Maria Oliveira KO. I don't know what the line is because I haven't checked yet, but I'm really impressed with her striking game. And she was known to be a BJJ girl when she first started as well. So I think she could defend the submission attempts if she does get in those hairy situations with Demopoulos. Demopoulos' striking has a long way to go. I don't really rate it too much. I don't think she won her last fight, but yeah, she got the nod. Needless to say, She just needs to improve that striking, and this reach disadvantage is not going to help her at all in this matchup. So I think Maria Oliveira wins this one pretty handedly. It's definitely going to be a bet on my card.
I mean, here's my thing about Vanessa though. Like, she can be like losing a whole fight and then pull guard and get an armbar off her back. And like Maria Oliveira has been finished by armbar twice. And the thing about Vanessa is she's not really gonna quit. Like, she'll be getting tagged up the whole fight. She'll be getting pieced up, which I think is gonna happen. It's just that one mistake is all it takes. She's a very opportunistic submission artist. But you're right. I mean, Maria Oliveira's got a longer reach than Max Holloway. So I definitely think on the feet she's gonna be lighting her up. It's just that one time that Vanessa successfully pulls guard and goes for that armbar, you could be winning the whole fight, and it's a Paul Craig situation all over again, right? So, or like a Claudio Puella situation, right? So, I don't fucking know, man. I mean, I'm rooting for you, so I'll go with Maria, but you just can't cry if Vanessa's getting her ass whooped and then she pulls off an armbar out of nowhere, you know?
100%. And we've seen how hurt Demopoulos got against Silvana. And I'm not comparing Maria Oliveira to Silvana in power wise at all, but she was nearly out of there. The way she pulled off that armbar was fantastic. Does it repeat itself? It doesn't tend to happen in the UFC all that often. You don't see that same situation get. You don't see a repetition in fights like this. So I think Maria Oliveira can hurt her really bad.
Well, I wish you luck with that. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Fernie Garcia. He's 10-2, taking on Brady Heastan, who's 5-2. It's pretty good for only being 5-2. Currently, they got it Brady minus 165. The comeback on Fernie is plus 140. Actually, opened a little closer. Interesting. You know, Brady for only being 5-2. I think I like his scrambling ability. I like his toughness. And he's one of those guys where I talk about less than 10 pro fights. Will be making these big improvements fight by fight. He's had the proper amount of time off to come out here much improved. And with his opponent, Fernie Garcia, although he's vastly more experienced, he's just kind of average. And now he's a bit of a gym hopper. Fortis MMA wasn't good enough for him. Now he's at Fight Ready, which both great gyms, but like, the gym doesn't always make the fighter. Let's just leave it at that, man. I mean, I'm not about to talk shit about Mark Madsen just because I'm bitter that I lost a bet on him. But like low key watching that fight, I was like, dude, like maybe you should give your Olympic medal back, because I mean, it looked like the guy hadn't wrestled a day in his life in that Grant Dawson fight. That was fucking crazy, bro. I mean that with all due respect. That's just, I mean, did he look like an Olympic wrestler to you in that fight? You know what I'm saying? But and we'll talk about the difference in, upper body takedowns versus lower body takedowns when we talk about the Natalia Silva fight. But anyways, back to Brady and Fernie. My issue with Fernie is, firstly, getting a vet lesson by Journey Newsom, big red flag. And then the fight prior to that on Contender Series, was it Josh Weems? I mean, Josh Weems doesn't exactly belong, as we've found out more than once now. So, he didn't look his best against Josh Weems and lands a punch, and Josh Weems was ready to go home. Then the next fight, he gets a vet lesson by Journey Newsom. So I ain't sold on this kid, being UFC caliber, but at least, he's tough. Mexican fighter, you got to respect him, but I think he's at the lower totem pole. I don't think he's going to be in the UFC this time next year. No disrespect. And I think Brady, not that we're talking future top 15, but at least I've seen some things I like. I really like his heart. I really like his scrambling ability. I think that he's starting to round things out a bit. I think that now you're taking the right amount of time off. Hopefully you've leveled up. Let me see Brady Heastan come out here and get a decision win. So I'll go with Brady.
And I'm right there with you. That Journey Newsom fight was absolutely horrible. It was not a good look at all for Fernie Garcia. And when you're looking at the measurables, Brady has a 4-inch reach advantage and a 1-inch height advantage against Garcia. The one thing that sticks out to me, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, is Fernie Garcia gets taken down left and right. He has a great get-up game. I'll give him that. But Brady is, and we've seen Michael Chiesa talk about this, A, on the Ultimate Fighter, and B, in like actual interviews when he's been asked about Brady. He said Brady has some of the best wrestling for that weight class that he's seen. And I don't think it's just because he's a training partner of his and he wants to sound nice. I do rate Brady's wrestling pretty highly. And I think he's going to be able to take Fernie Garcia down at will. And I know this is not a Prize Picks kind of stream, but Prize Picks is hanging 2.5 takedowns for Brady. And I think it gets that done in the first round. It's kind of disrespectful. But all that being said, I think Brady gets this fight done pretty handedly and gets a very decisive decision win. So give me Brady. I'm probably going to be betting him as well.
And last but not least, in the flyweight division, we got Natalia Silva. She's 13-5, taking on Teresa Bleda, who is 6-0. And currently, they got it. Natalia Silva -160. The comeback on Teresa Bleda is +140. I gotta say, man, I was blown away by Natalia Silva's UFC debut, man. Like, I love the lateral movement. I love the diversity of her kicks. I mean, busting up the legs, going to the body, going upstairs. You know, I mean, she's got some serious dexterity with those legs. The takedown defense was on point. Her punches were pretty damn effective too. Had the gas tank for all 3 rounds. I mean, took down an Olympic wrestler twice, landed close to 100 significant strikes. Like, hey, girl, do your thing. Because, I mean, and she's got real experience. I mean, her last loss was to fucking Marina Rodriguez. She went the distance with her back in the day. And, you know, since then, put together a win streak, took some time off, comes out here, looks amazing in the UFC. With Teresa Bleda, she's only 20 years old. She's still getting her feet wet, but she brings a lot of physical attributes. You know, she's 5'9", which is ginormous for a chick in that weight class. And she's got, you know, pretty strong wrestling, but I'd say that's about the extent of it. Now here's what I'm worried about. So I love everything about Natalia Silva, and it's easy to say that she stuffed the takedowns from an Olympic wrestler, and not only that, but she took down an Olympic wrestler twice. But here's the big difference: that Olympic wrestler, back to like the Mark Madsen talk, that Olympic wrestler was only going for upper body takedowns, right? Which was still great to see, you know, a smaller opponent stuff that. I love it. But Teresa Bleda is going to be going for lower body takedowns, going to be going for singles, going for doubles. So I'm inclined to believe that Natalia Silva can stuff those based off what I saw in the debut. It's just you have to fucking put some context into it, and you have to just be upfront about the fact that it was upper body takedown she was defending against Jasmine Jostovicius. It's going to be a different kind of takedown here against Teresa Bleda. But interestingly enough, Natalia Silva, even though we saw a 3-round striking clinic in her debut, she's actually known for having a really good arm bar. So maybe if she does get taken down here, maybe she can show off that armbar against an opponent named Ronda, which would be the irony of irony, which would just be poetic justice in a way. Not that I have anything against Teresa, I don't, but it would be hilarious to see a chick named Ronda get armbarred. But I like everything about this girl, Natalia Silva. Paid her dues on a regional scene. It's coming in here with what? With how many pro fights does she have? This is about to be her 20th pro fight. This is about to be Teresa's 7th pro fight. So I think the experience difference is huge here. I love the volume on the feet. And if you go on Natalia's Instagram, man, this chick's taking it seriously, man. This chick ain't playing games, man. Her strength and conditioning program is dialed in. All facets of her game are dialed in, and she's someone, like I said, paid her dues. And I think she's ready to shine right now. You know, had the right amount of experience on her regional scene before she came to the UFC. Whereas Teresa Bleda, if you watch that Contender Series fight, Dana didn't sign her that night. Dana said she's too green. Dana said she's too young. Dana said, you know, one day she'll be in the UFC. I didn't think it'd be so soon. I didn't think it'd be so soon, but he said she wasn't quite ready yet. So I'm a agree with Dana that she's not quite ready yet. I'm gonna go with Natalia Silva to outclass this young lady.
This might be the only fight on the slate where we have opposite views. So I love Natalia Silva's game. Shout out to her for cashing that plus 200 ticket last time around. That was amazing. Her striking is on point. She definitely has the advantage in the striking department. The issue for me is when you're speaking about Teresa Bleda, you're speaking about someone who is very tough. And a lot of people forget this. In that Contender Series fight, she completely blew out her knee in the second round, and it was visible. Like you could tell when she was standing before she go attempts to takedowns, she was hobbling on that leg against Nayar Maya, who, let's not forget, Nayar Maya was, I think, somewhere close to minus 300 favorite, and she still took Nayar Maya down in the second round all the way into the third to win that decision. And her ground and pound is pretty nasty. Now, imagine what she could have done if she was healthy on that knee. She probably could have finished Maya because Maya was getting tagged as well. So I like this price tag on Bleda. We're getting around like plus 150-ish, around that price point, depending on where you're looking. And although she seems to be a public dog, I'm not really shying away from it. I haven't gone to the window yet. But I assume that I am going to be placing a bet on her. Nothing crazy though, probably just a unit. I like the height advantage here, 5 inches, the reach advantage at 6. I'm not saying that Jasmine Jasudavicius didn't have those advantages as well, and Natalia Silva handled that well, but I don't rate Jasudavicius's boxing or takedown game all that well, even though she's a Olympian wrestler. It's just like, as you mentioned, it's 2 different kinds of takedowns and 2 different styles, and one just tends to work a little bit better than the other. So as a dog, I have to take Teresa Bleda here. She's enormous for the division, and I think she has a really opportunistic fight here and also a really good future ahead of her in the UFC, as long as she's able to continually improve her game.
You say she blew out her knee. Like, what exactly do you mean by that?
Like, I assumed it was a torn ACL.
You know that fight was only 2 months ago, right?
That is true.
So you're telling me she's coming in here with an injury? Because you don't just heal from a blown out knee in 2 months.
To be specific, a month and 5 days. Wow. Yeah, you could visibly see her hobbling on that knee. I believe it was her right leg from when I was watching tape the other day. From halfway through the second round, I believe, all the way into that third. So you're onto something there.
You know who's gonna kick those legs, right?
Mm-hmm. You're talking me off here.
Hey, so Jeffrey Gleason said, please do a bonus prediction for Vadim Nemkov versus Corey Anderson. All right, I'll be happy to do that. I'll only be happy to do that if everyone watching smashes the like button. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. All right, so main event of Bellator 288. We got Corey Anderson. He's minus 235. The comeback on Vadim Nemkov is plus 185. First time they fought, the line was flipped. It was minus 180. Nemkov, Corey Anderson was plus 150. And off the top of my head, I think Nemkov won the first round, and then Corey started to come back. But there was like a head clash or some shit, or eye poke, head clash. I don't remember. But, you know, honestly, at this price, I know Corey Anderson's a great fighter, but I've been waiting for that time when his chin's finally gonna get cracked again. I still think the guy's got a suspect chin. It's just with Vadim, you know, sometimes the pacing can be an issue, but hopefully at, you know, a price like plus 185, I'd be willing to roll the dice and see. Hopefully make some adjustments. You know, you've been in there with the guy once. You know what he brings to the table. You felt him before. You know how strong he is. Maybe a couple adjustments. You can come out here and cash an underdog ticket. So I'll actually go with Vadim Nemkov here.
Yeah, same exact thought. Vadim Nemkov is really looking good in that fight until he wasn't. Just a couple of minor adjustments against someone who is going up there in age, and Corey Anderson, whose chin has been tested but slowly withering away. I'm probably going to be taking Vadim there, but Bellator isn't my specialty, so I'm not the best or the brightest dude in the space for that.
Now, before we get out of here, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, Mahdi, what is the fight to watch for UFC Vegas 65?
It is a tough one. I think the fight to watch is definitely going to be Salikov and Fialho for me, because both fighters have something to prove here. Is Salikov on the way out, or does he still have some life in him? And then Fialho, was that one knockout loss to Jake Matthews a fluke, or is it something that's more repetitive and that chin isn't as durable as people think it is.
Definitely. I mean, when you get two strikers like that, that's definitely one of the fights to watch for me. My fight to watch is the fight we just disagreed on, the curtain jerker between Natalia Silva and Teresa Bleda, man. I mean, like, I want to know if that fight, between Natalia Silva and Jasmine was just kind of a one-off performance. Maybe Jasmine just ain't the best, and that's why Natalia, styled on her. Or is Natalia a future contender in this division? Because the kind of numbers she put up there, like, you put up numbers like that consistently, and you are a future contender. And I liked everything I saw about her. And with Teresa, only 20 years old, has some physical attributes. That goes a long way in this division. So for that reason, that heated showdown to kick off the card between Silva and Bleda is my fight to watch. Now, Wiz, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Vegas 65?
Fighter to watch for me it has to be Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I've been waiting for this guy to put things together and to show his potential. And I think this is a spot where he could really shine, especially in a co-main event spot. It's set up for this. So as long as he can step up to the occasion, I think he can really prove some people wrong about how his striking isn't as good as it is, and he doesn't have that power. He could actually turn some heads here and make a statement. So it has to be Kennedy for me.
And for me, I'm going to go with Derrick the Black Beast Lewis. This is the week that we tragically lost one of the other greatest knockout artists in UFC history in Rumble Johnson. I know Derrick Lewis, he comes out here and, gets another knockout, and extends his record rather, for most knockouts in heavyweight and UFC history. Pay tribute to Rumble Johnson. Plus, I mean, there's a lot of questions about where's Derrick Lewis at in his career right now. And this is truly one of those fights where a win and you're right back in the mix. A loss, and I mean, he's going to be fighting guys that are not in the top 10 anymore if he takes an L here. So this is a huge fight for the career trajectory of Derrick Lewis. You could even see him retire here with a bad loss. So for those reasons, Derrick the Black Beast Lewis is my fighter to watch. Well, Wiz, we did it. It's going down this Saturday afternoon in Las Vegas, Nevada, UFC Vegas 65. They can follow you at WizBets. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Everybody watching, do me a huge favor. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. Afterwards, leave me a comment. Feel free to share. All those little things you guys do help the show tremendously. And subscribe to Half the Battle everywhere podcasts are found. So thank you again, everybody, for the support. Good luck this weekend. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.
See you guys.